Imagine losing everything you own in a single afternoon. Not just your money or your home, but your name, replaced by a number. Your family, gone without warning. Every plan you ever made for your future, erased before you even knew it was happening. Now, imagine that in the middle of all that, a man found something no one could take from him, and it changed how an entire generation thought about suffering. That man was Viktor Frankl, an Austrian psychiatrist who survived several Nazi concentration camps during the Second World War, including Auschwitz. Before the war, he had already been developing a theory of psychology built around the idea that the primary drive in human beings isn't pleasure and isn't power, but meaning. Then his own life became the most extreme possible test of that theory. He lost his parents, his brother, and his pregnant wife to the camps. He was stripped of his medical practice, his manuscripts, his clothes, his name. And somehow, in the middle of that annihilation, he kept observing. Not as a prisoner numbly enduring, but as a psychiatrist still asking the same question he'd always asked. What allows one person to survive what breaks another? The book he wrote afterward, Man's Search for Meaning, is really two books folded into one. The first half is a spare, unflinching account of daily life in the camps. The second half lays out the psychological framework he built from what he witnessed, something he called logotherapy, the idea that the search for meaning, not the avoidance of pain, is what actually drives us forward. Decades later, this small book is still assigned in universities, still handed between friends during hard seasons, still quoted in therapy rooms, because it answers a question that never stops being relevant. Not how do we avoid suffering, because none of us gets to avoid it entirely. The real question is, what do we do with it once it arrives? The first idea Frankl puts forward is the one people remember most, and it's easy to state simply, even though living it is anything but simple. Nearly everything can be taken from a person by force. Your possessions, your freedom, your health, your relationships, even your body. But there is one thing that cannot be confiscated, no matter how total the circumstances become, and that is your ability to choose your inner response to what's happening to you. Not the event, the stance you take toward the event. Think about how differently this plays out in ordinary life, far from anything as extreme as a camp. Two employees get laid off from the same company on the same morning. One spends the next 6 months bitter, replaying the injustice, telling the story to anyone who'll listen, letting the anger calcify into identity. The other grieves it genuinely, and then starts asking a different question. What does this open up that wasn't open before? Same event, two completely different inner postures. Frankl would say the layoff itself didn't determine the outcome. The response did. This isn't about forced positivity, and it isn't about pretending pain doesn't hurt. It's about recognizing that between something happening to you and how you carry it, there is a gap, and that gap is yours. Nobody can colonize it without your permission, and almost nobody remembers to defend it. That idea sets up the deeper argument of the whole book, which is that meaning isn't something you stumble into when life is going well. It's something you can find or build in almost any circumstance, including the worst ones. Frankl noticed something striking among the prisoners around him. It wasn't the physically strongest who tended to survive the longest, and it wasn't the most optimistic in a naive sense either. It was the people who had some reason pulling them forward, a person waiting for them, a piece of work left unfinished, a promise they intended to keep. The ones who lost that thread, who stopped believing there was anything ahead worth reaching for, tended to decline fast, sometimes within days, even when their physical condition hadn't changed. Translate that into a much gentler modern context, and the pattern still holds. Picture someone recovering from a serious illness. 2 patients, same diagnosis, same treatment plan. One has nothing pulling them toward tomorrow, no project, no person they feel needed by, nothing beyond simply waiting to feel better. The other has a granddaughter's wedding in 8 months that they're determined to walk into on their own 2 feet. That second patient isn't guaranteed a better outcome, but something in how they endure the treatment changes when there's a reason attached to it. Frankl's point wasn't that meaning cures illness. It was that meaning changes how bearable the in-between becomes, and often how much strength a person can access when it matters. This leads directly into one of the book's most useful and most misunderstood ideas. Meaning isn't handed to you from outside, and it isn't a single grand purpose you're supposed to discover once and carry for life. Frankl argued that meaning can be found in 3 different directions, and most people only ever look in one of them. The first is through what you create or accomplish, your work in the broadest sense. The second is through what you experience, and specifically through who you love. The third, and the one people find hardest to accept, is through how you face suffering you cannot avoid or change. That third path deserves real attention because it's the one that separates this book from typical self-help. Frankl wasn't saying suffering is good or that you should seek it out. He was saying that when suffering is unavoidable, and at some point in every life it is, the way you carry it becomes itself a kind of meaning, maybe even a kind of achievement. Picture a parent caring for a child with a severe, permanent disability. There's no fixing this situation. No 5-step plan resolves it. But the parent who shows up for that child every single day, who finds moments of tenderness and even humor inside an exhausting, unchosen reality, is not simply surviving. They are demonstrating something about the human capacity to remain dignified inside circumstances that offer no way out. Frankl called this the last of the human freedoms, the freedom to choose your attitude in any given set of circumstances, even when every other freedom has been stripped away. He gave this stance a name that sounds almost contradictory at first: tragic optimism. Not blind optimism that pretends the tragedy isn't real. Optimism that stays intact in full view of the tragedy, refusing to let suffering, guilt, or death have the final defining word over a person's life. It's the difference between someone who says everything happens for a reason, as a way of avoiding the weight of what happened, and someone who says this happened, it was terrible, and I am still going to find something worth building on the other side of it. The first is denial wearing a hopeful mask. The second is what Frankl actually lived through and survived. There's a smaller, quieter idea running underneath all of this that's easy to miss, but worth pulling out on its own, because it shows up constantly in ordinary life, long before anyone faces anything close to a crisis. Frankl noticed that even inside the camps, prisoners found ways to preserve tiny fragments of dignity and even lightness. A shared joke, a moment noticing a sunset through barbed wire, a private memory of someone they loved, held on to deliberately. These weren't distractions from the horror. They were acts of resistance against it. The mind's ability to reach for something outside the immediate misery, even briefly, kept something essential alive. You see a domesticated version of this constantly. A nurse working an exhausting double shift in an overwhelmed hospital still stops to crack a joke with a coworker in the hallway, not because the situation has gotten lighter, but because that 30-second exchange keeps her human inside a shift that's trying to grind her down into just a function. A student buried under finals week still calls a friend for 10 minutes, not to solve anything, but because that connection is its own form of oxygen. Frankl would say these aren't small indulgences squeezed in around the real work of enduring hardship. They are the real work. The capacity to notice beauty, humor, or connection in the middle of difficulty isn't a luxury reserved for easier times. It's often the exact thing that makes harder times survivable. All of this connects to a distinction Frankl drew that quietly reframes how most of us think about happiness itself. We tend to chase happiness directly, as if it were a destination you could set a course for. Frankl argued this backfires because happiness isn't something you can pursue head-on. It's a byproduct. It shows up, almost sideways, as the natural result of a life oriented around something larger than your own comfort. A person you love, a piece of work you believe in, a value you refuse to abandon. Chase happiness directly, and it tends to slip away the moment you reach for it. Chase meaning, and happiness has a way of arriving as a side effect when you least expect it and aren't watching for it. Think about the difference between someone who spends a Saturday trying to manufacture a good time, bouncing between activities, chasing a feeling that keeps evading them, and someone who spends that same Saturday building a treehouse with their kid, tired and sweaty, and completely unconcerned with whether they're having fun. By evening, the second person is usually the happier one, even though happiness was never the goal. It arrived because they were oriented towards something outside themselves. Frankl would say, this is not a coincidence. It's how meaning behaves. It rewards you precisely when you stop demanding the reward directly. Near the end of the book, Frankl makes one more observation that feels almost like a warning aimed squarely at comfortable modern life. Even though he wrote it decades before, most of the comforts we now take for granted existed. He noticed that a certain amount of tension, of striving towards something not yet achieved, is actually necessary for psychological health, not harmful to it. A life with zero tension, zero unmet goals, zero gap between where you are and where you want to be isn't peaceful. It's empty. He compared it to a kind of psychological vacuum, and he thought this vacuum, not overwork, was becoming one of the great hidden sicknesses of modern life. The quiet despair of people who have comfort, but no direction. Safety, but no reason to stretch toward anything. You feel this in people who've achieved every visible marker of success and still can't explain why they feel hollow. A person who's paid off their house, hit every financial milestone, and has nothing left to reach for often reports feeling worse than they expected, not better. Not because success is bad, but because the absence of any meaningful tension leaves a gap that comfort alone can't fill. Frankl's answer wasn't to manufacture suffering. It was to make sure you always have some worthy thing pulling you forward, some gap between where you stand and where you're headed. that you actually care about closing. There's one more piece of this that Frankl was careful to include, and it quietly undercuts a lot of modern anxiety around purpose. He didn't believe meaning was fixed for a lifetime, discovered once, like a hidden treasure, and then simply carried forward unchanged. He believed it shifted, sometimes dramatically, depending on the season of a person's life and the specific circumstances in front of them. The question isn't what is the meaning of life, as if there's one universal answer waiting to be uncovered. The real question is always, what does life seem to be asking of you, right now, today, given exactly where you are? That question has a different answer at 25 than it does at 50, and a different answer during a stable year than during a year spent caring for a dying parent. This matters because so many people stall out looking for one permanent purpose, as though choosing the wrong one would be a life sentence. A young professional who spent years building toward a specific career, only to find it unfulfilling once achieved, often assumes something has gone wrong with them personally. Frankl's framework suggests something gentler. Maybe that goal was exactly the right answer for an earlier chapter, and simply isn't the right answer anymore. Meaning isn't a single lock you have to pick correctly on the first try. It's closer to a conversation you keep having with your own life, one that's allowed to change its answer as the questions themselves change. Pull every one of these ideas together, and one thread runs beneath all of them. The same thread Frankl found sitting inside the worst circumstance a human being can be forced into. Meaning is not something life owes you, packaged and waiting to be found. It's something you build, moment by moment, choice by choice, out of whatever material your life actually hands you, including, sometimes, the material you would never have chosen. The space between what happens to you and who you become in response to it is the one territory nobody can occupy but you. Suffering, when it can't be avoided, doesn't have to be meaningless. Work, love, and the daily decision to notice something worth noticing. These aren't separate from a well-lived life. They are what a well-lived life is actually made of. If there's a single question this book leaves behind, long after you've closed it, it isn't why is this happening to me? It's what does this moment, exactly as it is, right now, seem to be asking of me? Frankl found an answer to that question in a place that offered almost nothing to work with. Most of us will never be tested that severely, but the question waits for all of us anyway, quietly in the ordinary Tuesdays of our lives, asking to be answered one choice at a time.